Vijay Jaipal is one of the most talked about independent directors in the country right now because of his recently released film called Nirvana N, which stars Adil Hussain. So, in this episode of Cinema Wali Batein, Vijay Jaipal talks about his favorite films and filmmakers and talks about his journey as a filmmaker too. So, do check it out this video. Hello Vijay sir, welcome to Cinema Wali Batein, the talks about cinema with me, Cinephile Sanket. So sir, I wanted to ask you the first question, what films or TV show have you been watching recently?
Well, I watch a lot of content. I'm also a cinephile at some level, and I watch a lot of films and TV shows. And the last one that I watched very recently, and something which I really liked was the Underground Railroad by Barry Jenkins, who made Moonlight. It is on Amazon, and it just came out, and I was watching it last week. I watched all the 10 episodes in 2 days, and it was a masterpiece. I will call it a modern masterpiece. Very well made, well acted, well crafted. Of course, we have seen a lot of films and shows about, not shows, but films we have seen a lot about the darkest period of American history, which was the slave period, the about slavery and all of that. And of course, we have seen them, but I think this one was really good because it was very powerful, and also he was really playing with his narrative. Like, no, I could see elements of psychological horror. No, I could see elements of atmospheric horror, and then of course you see the conventional, socio-political drama that you get to see in a show like this. Beautifully made. I really loved it. Everyone should watch it. Yeah.
But anything apart have you watched in the recent few weeks?
Well, I watch a lot. I was watching Master of None, the new season, which took me by surprise because no, you go to watch Master of None expecting something because the first two seasons were very different. No, they were more romantic comedy, and you had a protagonist who was very different and all of that. But this season was very different, in terms of tone and rhythm, and I felt as if I was watching an European art house film that was unfolding, in real time, kind of, because it's very different. So yeah, I was watching Master of None. Of course, before that, I watched this one, Underground Railroad, and before that, I was watching this murder, sort of murder mystery, psychological drama called A Confession, which is on Sony Live, which has Martin Freeman as the protagonist. So yeah, so I've watched a lot. So if I have to make a list of everything that I've been watching, because as I told you, I'm a cinephile myself. I watch a lot of films and shows, and every day I watch something. And especially in the last 1.5 years, thanks to this pandemic, I've been only watching more than doing anything. So yeah. So but one thing that I liked really was the Underground Railroad. No, that is something which really struck with me. The imagery, the craft, the story, the performance, and no, I really loved it. So yeah.
But so since like I'm actually starting now, you are a filmmaker, you are a film director of two feature films. What was your journey in the film industry, sir?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure whether I'm part of the film industry. I have a problem in calling this an industry because filmmaking is a craft. No, it's an art form, and I don't belong to the commercial film industry. Like, I'm from Chennai. I lived all my life in Chennai, and I don't belong to the Tamil film industry. If you ask me, because for that matter, I don't belong to any industry. I'm an independent filmmaker trying to make something outside the studio system. But of course, uh, I'm not sure whether I can keep doing it forever, because at some point in time we will want to tell stories that may need industry support, the so-called industry support. But so yeah, so I don't belong to the industry, but I kind of work outside the system. My journey, like, right, Well, well, I've been making films for the last 10 years now. And of course, I don't have a conventional profile in the sense that I didn't go to a film school. I didn't assist anyone. In fact, I was working in the corporate world, doing something else. For 7 years. Now I did my MBA, and I was working as a human resource manager in corporates for 7 years. And but I was always a cinephile, and I was watching films. And at some point in time, I thought that I should become a filmmaker. And it's a long story, but yeah, one fine day I decided to quit my job, and I started making short films back in 2011, 2012, and I made a few short films, and that gave me the confidence to go ahead and make my feature. And I wrote my first feature, and the moment I wrote it, I knew that nobody will finance that film because it's very different. And I mean, it's not a commercial film. It's not a film which I was planning to make with big stars. It didn't have songs and all of that. It was a Tamil film set in Calcutta. The aesthetics and rhythm, everything was very different. So I knew that I won't get financing, for that film if I have to take the conventional route of approaching studios and production houses. So
So
I,
every
thanks to my
so just to be clear, like to the audience, actually, you're talking about your first film, Revelation, which is obviously on Cinema Premiere, which is streaming on that platform.
yes, I'm talking about my
Yeah.
first film,
Go ahead, sir.
Revelations. So once it became clear that I won't be able to raise money for that film uh, from the studios and in a conventional sense, I thanks to my corporate career, I had some savings and I got some loans from my family and all of that, and I managed to kind of produce that film with my own money, because I was also restless, because when I actually came to cinema I was already 30. It was 8 9 years back. I was already approaching 30, and I didn't have the patience to go to a film school. I didn't have the patience to go and assist anyone. I made a few short films, and then I one fine day decided that I would make a feature, and I then wrote this film, which was kind of very challenging and and against the grain. So I was restless. So I just decided to produce it myself. So I put in my own money and I did that film. Thankfully, the film came out well. It premiered at Busan. It went to a lot of festivals. Then it got picked up by Netflix. It was on Netflix for 3 years. It was on Movie for a year, and now it's on Cinema Premiere. So yeah. So and then of course I went on to make my second film, which was an indie, which didn't start as a indie film, but then it became a indie film at some point in time. And that's a film called Nirvana In, which I made with the likes of Adil Hussain and Rashri Deshpande and Sandhya Mridul. It's a psychological horror drama which we shot in Manali and Assam, and that film again premiered in Busan, because we also got post production support for that film from Busan. We did a part of post production for that film in Seoul and Busan, and then subsequently we also had our world premiere there, and then the film started traveling. But then the pandemic came, and all the plans got derailed, and all the festivals became online editions. And but yes, I was happy that the film was still being shown in all those online film festivals where an audience was getting to see those films. And then then we had this limited online premiere on Cinema Preview in December last year, and the response was really good. And since then, we are still trying to figure out a way to find a permanent home for the film where more audience can see the film on more regular basis.
But so, like you said that your debut film was in Tamil, and this film was Nirvana in was in Hindi. How did the transition happen? Like it actually is a difficult task from making a film in one language, which was in Tamil, and in another language, which is Hindi. So, like, how did this happen? Like the transition.
It was challenging. See, for me, language is not a problem at all. The sense, see, the spoken language is only a tool. Language is only a tool to tell a story, right? And as long as you know the cinematic language, spoken language doesn't matter. So my first film was in Tamil, but then it was set in Calcutta. It also had a lot of English dialogues, and it also had a few Bengali dialogues, because it all depends on where you set your story. And with Nirvana in, once we decided to shoot the film in Manali, and once Adil Hussain came on board as the protagonist, it became a Hindi film. The intention was not to make a film in Hindi. Originally, it was written as a Tamil Malayalam bilingual. The story was happening in Kerala, and the protagonist is from Kerala, and things like that. But then, once we finalized the location, once Adil came on board, it became a Hindi film very organically, very naturally. And of course, Hindi is not my first language, and no, I don't even speak the language. I can understand Hindi, but I can't really speak the language. So yes, during the shoot, it was a problem. Thankfully, it's a film which had very less dialogues, so I escaped kind of. And also my lead actors and most of my crew, they spoke English, and I also had a very good first AD who was very good in Hindi, who also wrote my dialogues in Hindi. So yeah, I kind of scraped through, but yeah, it was challenging. It was challenging sometimes, to speak to people, and yeah, but it's okay, I guess. Yeah, it was
But
challenging, but then that was not the biggest challenge we had. No, we had so many other bigger challenges. No, when we were making that film. So in comparison, language was not my biggest challenge. It was a challenge, but no, I was not really paying attention to that challenge because I had bigger challenges than that when I was making that film. Yeah.
how did you manage to keep this as an indie, perfectly indie film without any glamour songs and without any heroes in it?
No, well, see, I was making independent film, no, not a mainstream film. So while writing the script or while making the film, we were not thinking about all those stuff. The idea was to make a good film, and since the landscape became, because since we were planning to shoot the film in Manali, and since Adil Hussain was our lead actor, we decided to make the film in Hindi. And I also felt that a film like this, it's good, no? Like, when you make a film like this in a language that is spoken by more people, you reach out to a much wider audience. So that is definitely there. But I didn't make any specific. Of course, we made some changes. Like the original protagonist was from Kerala, but once Adil came on board, I had to change the protagonist from Kerala to Assam. And no, there were a few scenes which we were supposed to shoot in Kerala, but then we had to shoot them in Assam. And originally, my protagonist in the film was a Kathakali dancer. But then once Adil came on board, we changed that to Bauna, which is a traditional dance form in Assam. So I had to make those cultural changes to suit the needs of the script or the revisions that I made in the script. That was done. But we were not thinking about including songs and glamour and all that stuff that you were talking about, because it's an independent film. It's an independent film. We were trying to make a film where we were trying to be honest to the material that we had, the script, and we were trying to make a film for an audience which will be more, what to say, which also likes this kind of cinema,
A niche
right? Of
audience.
course, it comes to, yeah. I won't call niche. I think we don't know, right? Like, see, when a film is made, even when a commercial film is made, you never know. No, so some films do well, some films don't do well. No, there are many commercial films which are being made, thinking that a lot of people will come and watch, and they will make hundreds of crores, but they became a flop. Sometimes a small film, even in the mainstream circuit, they would have made on a budget of 1 crore, 2 crore. Suddenly, you will see that as a sleeper hit. The box office pundits will call it a sleeper hit. No, you never know. So whether a film is niche or not, that you will come to know only after the film is made and is put out, for an audience to see. Because then the film, it's about the engagement that the film has with an audience. So so if the film is able to talk to a wider audience, then it doesn't become a niche film. But if only a handful of audience are going to watch, then maybe you can call it niche. But even then, I'm not sure about these terminologies, because these words like art house, niche, and all, sometimes we use these words for our convenience, just to, classify things. Like this film, I won't even call it a horror film. Many people call it a horror film. I don't even call it a horror film because it's not an horror film. It is a mystery drama with elements of psychological horror, even supernatural horror and things like that. So I really don't like slottings. But yes, of course, when you're making a film like this where you don't see the traditional elements that you've seen in art, in a commercial film, of course you are kind of restricting your audience base. It happens. So maybe in that sense, it is a film for a niche audience. But I don't know. No, unless until we put out the film, and then only we will know. No, like based on how many people see the film, then we will know whether it's niche or not niche. But yes, it is a challenging film to watch, no doubt about that. So maybe it's not a film for everyone. So, and we are fine with that. No, the thing is, even while we are making the film, we knew that we are making a film that is really challenging. Maybe not everyone can watch this film because it is not something where you will see entertainment, in the traditional sense. It's a film that will challenge you as an audience. So yeah, so we were aware of those risks, and we were aware of those challenges. Yes.
But so, so you told me just like minutes before that your Nirvana N's post production work, I think, was done was like thanks to Busan Film Festival, the Asian Cinema Fund, I think, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong,
Yes.
but
Yes. Yes.
yeah. So like how difficult is it to get the funding from the film festival, like not just the Busan Film Festival, but obviously there are Berlin Film Festival who there's Berlin Film Festival who gives the funding to yeah, up and coming filmmakers, and even Sundance also gives it. How difficult it is to get the funding from them?
It is difficult. It is very competitive because see, most of the film festivals which have these funds, like post production fund and script development fund and all of that, they have very limited slots, and so many people are applying for it. Like the Asian Cinema Fund, which we got, there were like 100 applications, which came in that year, and out of 100, they chose two films, one from Japan and one was my film from India. So it is very competitive. It is very competitive. I think, and it's a combination of various factors. Like I think they look at a lot of things. First, of course, the merits and demerits of the project. Like like with Asian Cinema Fund, you have to send them a rough cut of the film. So no, they will see the rough cut, and they will see whether this film is really good. Of course, they are not seeing the final film; they're only seeing the rough cut. But even by seeing the rough cut, they will come to some kind of a conclusion in terms of how good that material is or how bad the material is and all of that. That is one element. That is one factor. The other factors are, of course, they'll also look at the filmmaker. Like, see, one thing which really worked for me personally was that my first film was in Busan. So, so they also look at that. And with every festival, the thing is, once you go to a festival as a first time or a second time filmmaker, the first time you go there, they always make sure that they support you on a continuous basis. I've seen this happening with a lot of filmmakers. Like, no, I know filmmakers who have been to Rotterdam and other festivals, with their films, and when they make the next film, they have been supported by those festivals, by with the post production support and script development fund and things like. It's the same with Busan also,
I think
and
Arun
Busan
Karthik
especially.
I received
Yes.
something, some help for his film
Yes.
Nasir, I think, right?
Yes. 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 Yes.
Yeah, go
And
on,
there
sir.
are other film. Yeah. Yes. And there are other filmmakers also, who have been to festivals, and they have been supported by these festivals on a long term basis. And Busan especially is a festival which really nurtures and supports Asian filmmakers. They really support Asian filmmakers a lot, and yeah, so that is also a factor. A director's profile and credibility, and what he has done in the past also plays a very very important role. Your long-term connectivity with the festival also plays a role. Your film also plays a role. So it's a combination of everything, and sometimes you also have to be lucky. Like, so it's extremely competitive. Like, to be selected from a list of 100 from around Asia is a big thing. And of course, apart from merit and profile and credibility and all of that, you also have to be a little lucky. I think we were lucky because when we got the post production fund, we were really struggling. We finished the film, we did some post production, but we were struggling to finish the film because we were lacking finishing funds. And the fund, and this Busan Asian Cinema Fund, we got at the right time. It came at the right time because we were struggling to finish the film, and it came to us at the right time. Of course, they didn't give us money, but we got selected, and we went there, and myself and my sound designer, we went there and we spent 3 weeks there doing the film's grading. And of course, I went there first for the grading, and then my sound designer joined me, and we did the final sound mix there. We did the 5.1 mix there. We did the DCP there. We did the English subtitling, final work there. So yeah, so a lot of post production work, and we got an opportunity to collaborate with a few Korean studios and technicians. Like the studio where we did the grading is owned by a guy who edited Snowpiercer, directed by Bong Joon Ho. And the other studio where we did the final sound mix is a very popular sound studio, sound mixing studio in Seoul, where a lot of commercial independent Korean drama films have been their post production has been done there. So yeah, so apart from the fact that we got the support to finish the film, it was also a great learning opportunity for me to go there and work with all those technicians and to be amongst them and go through that process, be there. So yeah, so there are a lot of tangible and intangible benefits that you really get when you get these, when you win these funds and grants and things like that. But yes, you have to be lucky also. No, it's very competitive. Yes, merits, everything is there, but you also have to be sometime lucky. And I would I would say that I was extremely lucky, and I will always be grateful to Busan for the support that they've given to me on both my films. Both my films, they have supported me a lot.
But so coming back to your early days of a filmmaker, so what inspired you to make your first film? Which films, I would like ask, inspired you to
So
make
that,
your first films, initial films, I would say.
well, as I told you, I'm a cinephile. I watch a lot of films, so I can't really pinpoint and say that this is one film that really inspired me to make my first film. There are a lot of films and filmmakers over the years who have inspired me to even get into cinema. Like, no, of course, as a kid, I was growing up on Tamil commercial cinema. I was a big fan of Rajinikanth earlier, and then I became a fan of Kamal Hassan, and which I'm still. And I grew up watching all those commercial films. Then I started watching Hindi films and English films, Hollywood mostly. And then when I went to college, I started watching world films. That was my first introduction to world films when I was in my first year at college, and that changed my world. When I was watching the likes of Kieslowski, when I watched the Color trilogy by Kieslowski, that really changed my perception about cinema. Like because my perception and worldview and my understanding of cinema was very different before I watched these world films. And so yeah. So then I watched all those films. Then I got introduced to all the great masters of the world, Kubrick and Ozu and Kurosawa, and all the European masters. Uh, you know, Dardenne
Bergmans and
brothers.
Tarkovskis.
Yeah, yeah, Bergman, Tarkovsky, and no, even the contemporaries. No, I'm a big fan of Lanthimos from Greece. I'm a big fan of Dardenne brothers from Belgium. I'm a big fan of Ken Loach from from the UK.
My
I'm a
personal
big fan
favorite.
of, so yeah, I'm a fan of a lot of filmmakers. I'm a fan of a lot of filmmakers. So you can't really pinpoint and say that this is the film that changed my perception. But yes, as I said, watching world films, watching all these masters, definitely, subconsciously my sensibility and taste was changing, and it took some time. No, it took some years. No, before it happened. No, I couldn't. Before I could even realize that my sensibility and taste was changing. It was changing, and that reflected in my first film Revelations also. Of course, when I was making short films, I was still very confused. So if you look at my short films, you will see a lot of confusion in them, because I was still not very clear in terms of, because I was in Chennai. Yes, I was tripping on world cinema, but then I also have to be a little pragmatic. And I was in Chennai, and the only kind of filmmaking that survives here is commercial filmmaking. At least other places like Kerala and Bengal, to some extent Marathi, they have a history and legacy of independent cinema. But Tamil Nadu, yes, there are filmmakers within the commercial space who are doing something different, but we never had a vibrant, commercial parallel independent art house cinema movement. We never had that. So I was pragmatic. I was confused. I was not sure. No, I wanted to do films like those masters, but at least attempt. But then, the environment was not supporting me. So you could see all that confusion in my short films. But then finally I decided, okay, no, I know this is going to be challenging, but I'm not going to take the route that everyone is taking. Let me take my my own route. Let me go in a different direction, see what happens. And that's what I'm trying to do as of now. I don't know what will happen tomorrow. I'm not saying that I'll go and make those masala films, but but maybe a time will come where I will have to be part of the industry, the so-called industry that you said, and make studio films like Chloe Zhou, who made Nomadland. She's now made a Marvel movie. So that doesn't mean that she is not an independent filmmaker anymore. No, you can't say that she's a sellout. No, that's because she made a Marvel film after making a film like Nomadland. As long as you are honest to yourself, as long as you do the kind of cinema that you want to do in the most uncompromising and honest and robust way, like environment doesn't matter. No, what I'm trying to do now, of course, is to create my own ecosystem where I can do my kind of cinema. But I don't know. Let's see how things pan out.
So this question is like a cliche thing, but I'll still ask it. So, uh, what's your advice for young filmmakers, sir?
I don't know. I see. I don't think. See, I have made only two films. I am a student of cinema myself, so I really don't think that I've reached a stage where I can give advice to young filmmakers. Because I'm a young filmmaker myself. Of course, I may be old in terms of age, but I'm a young filmmaker myself. I made only two films. The only thing that I can say is just as I just said, whatever you do, whether you're making commercial films or art house films, of course I don't like these classification, but the world believes in these. So sometimes you have no other choice but to use these words. So whatever kind of cinema that you want to do, do it honestly. Be courageous, be brave. Because a lot of filmmakers that I really respect who are still making films, around the world and even in India, they are very courageous, very brave, and very honest to their heart and to their socio-political perspective and all of that. So do whatever you want, but do it in the most honest way possible. And don't see. I don't know. The thing is, this pandemic has taught us a lot. This 1 year, one major thing that I have learned in this pandemic is to be humble and not to be part of any rat race. Sometimes we get into that, right? Like we put ourselves in comparison with others, and okay, he's doing that, she is doing that, I also should do that. So we sometimes subconsciously also it happens. We get into these rat races where we try to do stuff which we necessarily don't have to do. But this pandemic has taught us to slow down. Life is not a race. Slow down, do your own stuff, enjoy life, gain experiences. And that's what I would say to people, if at all I can say. But as I said, I don't think I even qualify to give advice to anyone, because I'm myself seeking a lot of advice from others.
So, last question, sir. What's next for you, sir?
I don't know, okay. Because I've been working on two three things. Like I have written a couple of features. I'm trying to pitch them to people, to get money and all. Because compared to my first two films, these two films will be slightly expensive to make. So not very much, but little but expensive. So I am trying to get some producers on board. I'm also trying to parallelly explore actors and casting, things like that. I've also There are other couple of things which I'm working on, but they are very early stages, so I'm not sure I can talk about them. But yeah, yeah. So there is one film that I've written, and I've been writing it for the last 5 years. That was supposed to be my second film, but then the writing was not falling in place, and there were a few other factors, so I had to postpone that film. And that's when I decided to make Nirvana again, which was supposed to be a short-term project, but then it became a 3-year project. So yeah, so that film which I was working for 5 years. So finally the script is ready, and that's one of these two films that I'm talking about. I am exploring opportunities to finance and get it made. I don't know, because we are living in a very uncertain time. So let's see how it pans out.
Sure, sure, sure. So, thank you so much, sir, for joining me to this podcast, sir. Like, I'm so excited to share this podcast super soon. And also, sir, you're the first ever filmmaker to join my podcast. So I'm
Oh, okay.
so honored
Thanks for
to
the honor. No, the
yeah.
honor is mine. The honor is mine. Thank you for having me here, and I really enjoyed this. And I wish you all the best. And we need a lot of people like you to spread, the word about good cinema, because film appreciation is something which is really lacking in our country. We need to do a lot more, in that space, because without film appreciation, without really changing the perception about cinema, in the general audience, things are not going to change. So film appreciation is very important, and what you guys are doing, in your own unique small way, to film appreciation is very very commendable, and I really, I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much, Pal.
Sure, sir. And thank you so much for coming to this podcast. And we'll see you soon, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you.